June 12, 1943. 150 miles west of Africa. 047 hours Korvetten Kapitän Werner Tjugan, 34, commander of U-118, scanned empty Atlantic horizon through his periscope. His Type XB supply submarine carried 200 tons of diesel fuel, meant to keep 8 German U-boats hunting Allied convoys for another month. Without him, those submarines would turn back to France in 3 days. With him, they'd sink 50,000 more tons of Allied shipping. Command estimated his mission success rate at 90%. Empty ocean, no convoys for 400 miles, but what Tjugan didn't see was 20 miles behind him. A ship that shouldn't exist was hunting him. Not a battleship or cruiser. Something new, something improvised, something that would break his supply line in 90 seconds. What happened next would convince German Naval Command the Atlantic was lost. Not in 6 months, in 6 weeks. By spring 1943, the Battle of the Atlantic stood at a crossroads. For 3 years, German U-boats had terrorized Allied shipping. In March alone, they sank 97 merchant ships, 14,000 tons sent to the bottom. Britain down to 6 weeks of food supplies. 1 more month like March, and England starves. Allied convoys had destroyers, corvettes, patrol boats, but these surface ships had a fatal weakness. Range. A destroyer escorting convoy could chase submarines only 10 miles from the convoy before turning back. Beyond that perimeter, U-boats surfaced, radioed positions, formed wolf packs, waited. The solution was obvious. Aircraft carriers, launch planes that could hunt submarines 200 miles out, search the gaps, force U-boats underwater where they moved at 3 knots instead of 18. But there was a problem. America had 6 fleet carriers in 1943. All were in the Pacific fighting Japan. Britain had 4, protecting Mediterranean convoys, none available for Atlantic convoy duty. So Admiral Ernest King, Chief of Naval Operations, made a decision that violated every rule of naval warfare. Take merchant ships, civilian cargo vessels, cut them open, weld flight decks on top, create carriers out of freighters in 90 days. Naval architects called it insane. These ships displaced 10,000 tons. Fleet carriers displaced 30,000. Top speed 18 knots versus 33. Flight deck 440 feet versus 800. Could carry 20. Aircraft versus 90. Sailors nicknamed them CVEs, officially escort carriers, unofficially combustible, vulnerable, expendable. The Navy built them anyway. Henry Kaiser's shipyards in Oregon launched one every 28 days. By May 1943, 6 were operational. The question was, could improvised carriers built from cargo ships actually hunt down Germany's most dangerous submarines? Admiral King had a plan to find out. And it started with one number: 14. Germany had 14 Type 14th supply submarines. The Milch Cows. Each carried 200 tons of diesel fuel. Each could refuel 8 smaller U-boats. The mathematics were devastating. Without refueling, a Type 7 U-boat patrolled American coast for 16 days. With 1 refueling, 35 days. With 2 refuelings, 60 days. Those 14 supply submarines doubled Germany's effective submarine force, not by building more U-boats, by keeping existing ones at sea twice as long. King's staff calculated the breaking point. Sink 5 Milch Cows, U-boat patrol time drops 40%. Sink 10. The wolf packs withdraw from American waters entirely. Sink all 14. Germany's Atlantic campaign collapses. British Admiralty disagreed. Too risky using secret intelligence. If Germany realized Allies were reading Enigma messages, they'd change codes. Better to let supply submarines operate and protect the intelligence source. King replied with one sentence: "The refueling submarine is the key to U-boat deployment. We will sink them." On May 31, 1943, USS Bogue, first American escort carrier in Atlantic service, received new orders. Detach from convoy on 184. Hunt submarines independently. Priority targets: any Type 14 supply boat. The offensive had begun. Captain Giles Short, 46, commander of USS Bogue, read the decrypted message 3 times. German supply submarine U-118, estimated position 24 degrees north, 19 degrees west. Refueling rendezvous scheduled for June 13th. 8 customer submarines waiting. Short's group consisted of Bogue and 4 World War I destroyers, ancient ships with riveted hulls, obsolete before Pearl Harbor. But they had sonars, depth charges, and one advantage Germany never anticipated. They could follow Bogue anywhere because Bogue could refuel them at sea. Short calculated distances. U-118 location, 280 miles southwest. Bogue could steam at 18 knots. Arrive in 16 hours. Position aircraft overhead by dawn, June 12th. But there was a complication. The Bogue carried 21 aircraft, 16 TBF Avengers torpedo bombers, 5 F-4F Wildcat fighters. On a good day, she could keep 4 planes airborne simultaneously for search patterns covering 40,000 square miles. U-118 could dive in 25 seconds. From periscope depth to 150 feet in 1 minute. Once submerged, invisible. A submarine visible on surface for 2 minutes became a submarine lost for 6 hours. The math was unforgiving. Spot submarine. Close from 10 miles. Attack before it dives. Margin for error. 0. Lieutenant Commander William Drain, Composite Squadron 9 Commander, briefed his pilots at 0600 June 12th. New doctrine. Wildcat Avenger teams. Fighter goes first. Strafes the deck. Keeps gunners down. Keeps them surfaced. Bomber follows. Drops 4 depth bombs. We practiced this for 3 months. Today we find out if it works. At 0915 hours, Lieutenant Robert Williams launched from Bogue in Avenger No. 36. Wildcat No. 9 formed on his wing. Search sector. Southwest quadrant, 150-mile radius. They flew for 20 minutes, seeing nothing but waves. Then Williams' radio man in the rear turret called out, "Wake, surface. 3 o'clock low." Williams banked right. There, cutting white line through blue Atlantic, U-118 running on surface recharging batteries. Bridge crew visible. Conning tower open. Williams radioed Bogue. "Contact. Estimate 20 miles your position southwest. Attacking now." What Korvettenkapitan Chigan saw next would be reported in his interrogation transcript 4 hours later. He was below in the control room when the alarm bell rang. Bridge lookout screaming, "Aircraft!" Chigan rushed up ladder to conning tower. Saw 2 dots approaching from northeast, one slightly ahead. He shouted dive order. Then the leading aircraft opened fire. 50 caliber machine guns ripping across submarine's deck at 400 yards. Chigan's deck gunners dove for hatches. The submarine began emergency dive. Aft tanks flooded. Bow started down. Chigan later told interrogators, "We were at periscope depth, maybe 10 seconds from safety, when the second aircraft appeared directly overhead. Not diving. Horizontal. Altitude maybe 200 feet. I saw 4 black objects leave the aircraft. For 1 second I thought they missed. The 4 depth bombs bracketed U-118 perfectly. 2 exploded 5 feet port. 2 exploded 5 feet starboard. 600 pounds of Torpex explosive per bomb. Shockwave hit submarine like a sledgehammer. U-118's hull plates split at seams. Ballast tanks ruptured. Diesel fuel sprayed through hull fractures into control room. Batteries cracked. Chlorine gas mixed with seawater. Chigan's chief engineer shouted one word. "Surface!" U-118 blew all tanks. Surfaced in 20 seconds. Chigan climbed to bridge expecting to see aircraft forming for second attack. Instead, he saw 3 more Avengers and 2 Wildcats arriving from northeast. Behind them, American destroyers racing toward him at 30 knots. And on the horizon, a ship with a flight deck. He gave the order. "Abandon ship. Scuttle submarine. Prepare demolition charges." At 10:43 hours, U-118 sank by the stern. 41 crew members in water, all recovered by USS Bogue destroyers. 1 KIA from aircraft strafing. That evening, Captain Short sent encrypted message to Admiral King. U-118 sunk. Refueling mission aborted. 8 customer submarines without fuel within 72 hours. The German submarine headquarters in Paris received U-118's final transmission at 10:48 hours, June 12th. Very message content. Under air attack. Severe damage. Abandoning. Then silence. Admiral Karl Dönitz, commander of German submarine fleet, read the intercept. This was the fifth supply submarine sunk in 30 days. U-487 destroyed June 13th. U-118 lost June 12th. U-664 sunk August 9th. All to carrier aircraft. All in open ocean. All when intelligence suggested area was clear. Dönitz called staff conference. The question: how were Americans finding supply submarines in mid-ocean? Three possibilities. First, German codes compromised. Second, American radar detecting surfaced submarines at impossible ranges. Third, American aircraft coverage now extended to all Atlantic. Dönitz rejected first possibility. Enigma machines were mathematically unbreakable. He rejected second. Radar couldn't detect submarines beyond 20 miles. That left third possibility. And third possibility meant only one thing. Americans had deployed carrier forces across entire Atlantic, but Germany's intelligence reported America had 6 carriers total, all in Pacific theater. Where were these Atlantic carriers coming from? The answer arrived August 7th when U-66 surfaced to refuel from U-117. Both submarines were spotted by aircraft from USS Card. U-117 sunk. U-66 severely damaged. Survivors rescued by American destroyers. During interrogation, U-66's executive, Officer Heinrich Lange, asked his captors, "What ship launched those aircraft?" "We saw no carriers within 200 miles. American interrogator replied, "USS Card, Escort Carrier. One of 50 we're building." Lange's interrogation transcript recorded his response. 50 carriers? We were told America had 6. Interrogator. Fleet carriers, 6. Escort carriers, 50. All hunting your supply boats. The transcript noted Lange was silent for 30 seconds, then said, "The Atlantic is lost." By September 1943, Germany had lost 9 of 14 supply submarines. The remaining 5 were ordered to stay submerged during daylight. This cut their refueling capacity by 60%. Wolf packs that once stayed off American coast for 8 weeks now returned to France after 3 weeks. Allied shipping losses dropped from 97 ships in March to 43 ships in September to 16 ships in November. The U-boat threat, which had nearly strangled Britain, was broken. And it was broken by ships the Navy called expendable. Escort carriers went on to sink 53 U-boats during the war. Their composite squadrons flew 23,000 combat sorties. They forced submarines to remain submerged 70% of time, reducing effective patrol radius from 3,000 miles to 1,200. The one captured submarine, U-505, taken by USS Guadalcanal's hunter-killer group on June 4, 1944, provided Enigma machines and codebooks that helped break remaining German naval ciphers through end of war. This strategic shift revealed something about American industrial warfare. Traditional navies built perfect solutions. Fleet carriers took 4 years to construct, required specialist shipyards, needed precisely trained crews. American approach: build adequate solutions in 90 days. The escort carrier was slower, smaller, more vulnerable than fleet carriers, but adequate, and available in quantities that overwhelmed any perfect defense. Germany built 154 submarines during World War II, produced at incredible rate of 4 per week by 1944. But they couldn't build enough supply submarines to keep them operational. 14 Milch Cows supported entire Atlantic fleet. When 10 were sunk, the mathematics of submarine warfare collapsed. As Admiral Karl Dönitz wrote in his memoir, "The enemy developed small carriers in numbers we never anticipated. These vessels, which we had discounted as ineffective, proved capable of sustained operations that made continued U-boat warfare in the Atlantic untenable." Post-war analysis by U.S. Naval War College calculated the strategic impact. Without escort carriers, U-boats would have sunk additional 400 merchant ships between June 1943 and May 1945. This would have delayed D-Day invasion by 6 months and extended European war into 1946. With escort carriers, the campaign cost was 53 German submarines destroyed versus 6 escort carriers lost. Casualty exchange ratio, 9-to-1 in favor of Allies. American doctrine changed permanently. Before escort carriers, Navy believed anti-submarine. Warfare required fleet carriers, heavy cruisers, specialized hunter-killer forces. After escort carriers, Navy understood simple principle. The adequate solution available now beats perfect solution available never. Today, that principle is called quantity has a quality all its own. World War II called it the Escort Carrier Program. Admiral King called it the weapon that closed the Atlantic Gap. German U-boat commanders had another name for it. Interrogation records from 1944 show consistent phrasing among captured submarine captains. When asked why they surrendered, typical response was, "The small carriers are everywhere. We cannot surface. We cannot refuel. We cannot continue." Korvettenkapitän Werner Zeigen survived the war. Returned to Germany 1947 after 3 years in American POW camp in Louisiana. Became merchant marine captain. Commanded container ships until retirement in 1978. In 1972 interview for German Naval History Project, he was asked what he remembered about the day U-118 sank. Long pause on interview tape. Then Zeigen's voice. "I remember thinking we were safe. Middle of Atlantic. No convoys, no destroyers. Then I saw the aircraft. Then I saw the ship with flight deck. Then I understood. America had built aircraft carriers from cargo ships, dozens of them, maybe hundreds. That's when I knew. We couldn't win. You cannot defeat a nation that builds carriers from freighters in 3 months." Interviewer. "Did you report this to command?" Zeigen. "I was in American prison camp by sundown. But other commanders reported same thing. Dönitz knew by August 1943. Every U-boat captain knew by October. The small carriers were everywhere. We could not fight them all." Captain Giles Short, commander of USS Bogue, received Navy Cross for actions June 1943. His carrier group sank 8 submarines during 6-month deployment. After war, Short became president of naval architecture firm. Designed container ship conversion systems until death in 1968. Age 71 when USS Bogue herself survived the war. Decommissioned 1946, sold for scrap 1960. Her flight deck, saved from scrapping, is displayed at Naval Museum in Hampton Roads, Virginia. Plaque reads, USS Bogue CVE-9. First escort carrier to sink enemy submarine. June 1943. The ship that closed the Atlantic Gap. Lieutenant Commander William Drain, who developed the Wildcat Avenger team tactics, returned to California 1945. Became commercial pilot. Flew for TWA until 1970. Died 1989, age 78. Memorial Service Program quoted his favorite saying, "Perfect is the enemy of good enough. We flew good enough planes from good enough ships. We won." Admiral Karl Dönitz spent 10 years in Spandau prison for war crimes. Released 1956. Wrote memoirs that barely mentioned supply submarines. In private papers released 2003, found this note dated November 1943. The small American carriers have made Atlantic operations unsustainable. We continue because order demands, but mathematics demands we stop. 70% of patrol time now spent submerged. Effective hunting area reduced 65%. We are fighting with half a fleet. The last German-type 14th Supply submarine, U-490, was sunk June 12, 1944 by aircraft from USS Croatan, exactly 1 year after U-118. By then, escort carriers had destroyed all 14 Milch Cows. German U-boats never again operated effectively in Western Atlantic. Today, escort carrier tactics are taught at Naval War College. Not as history, as case study in asymmetric warfare. The principle: dominant weapon systems can be defeated by adequate systems available in overwhelming numbers. The escort carrier was slower than fleet carrier, carried fewer planes, had lighter armor, higher loss rate, but America built 77 escort carriers in 42 months. Germany couldn't build enough submarines to counter them. There's a larger lesson here. It's not about ships or submarines. It's about recognizing what's actually needed versus what's theoretically perfect. In June 1943, Navy had two choices: wait 2 years for fleet carriers, or deploy escort carriers immediately. Waiting meant Germany-controlled Atlantic. Deploying meant accepting higher casualties for faster results. Admiral King chose faster results, not because escort carriers were better, because they were available. How often do we wait for perfect solution when adequate solution is available now? Escort carriers weren't perfect. They were nicknamed combustible, vulnerable, expendable. Sailors who served on them knew the risks. But those sailors closed the Atlantic gap. They broke the supply chain. They turned the tide. The last reunion of USS Bogue crew was held in 1998 in Norfolk, Virginia. 43 surviving crew members, average age 79, gathered at Naval Station Norfolk. They toured modern aircraft carrier USS Harry S. Truman. Displacement, 100,000 tons. Length, 1,092 feet. Crew, 5,000. One Bogue veteran, former aviation machinist's mate James Patterson, age 81, stood on Truman's flight deck and laughed. Reporter asked what was funny. Patterson replied, "Bogue displaced 10,000 tons. Length 440 feet. Crew 900. We called her a floating death trap. But we closed the Atlantic gap with Death Trap. This beautiful ship would have taken 4 years to build. We had 90 days, so we sailed Death Trap. And we won. That's the lesson of escort carrier. Perfect is the enemy of done. In war, in business, in life. Sometimes adequate solution available now beats perfect solution available never." German U-boat commanders learned this lesson in summer 1943. They looked at American escort carriers and saw poorly built ships with inadequate aircraft. They were right. Escort carriers were inadequate, but there were 50 of them. And adequate in quantity becomes decisive in effect. Korvettenkapitän Werner Chigen, last interview 1978, age 69, said it best. "We built better submarines. Americans built adequate carriers, but they built 50 adequate carriers. We built 0 adequate responses. In the end, adequate times 50 beats perfect times 0. That's why we lost Atlantic. That's why we lost war."